In quietness and confidence shall be your strength. Long before I was born, God was at work, creating life, nature, and the world of people and things. The worlds were ideas in the mind of God that have been realizing themselves through the ages. God is not through with creation. God is not through with me. In quietness and confidence shall be my strength.
Dr. Fluker, welcome to Can Learn Conversation. I'm so honored to have you here today.
Thank you so much. I'm so honored to be here today.
So we're here to talk about Howard Thurman. Now, there is a particular quote we've been focusing on. But before we get to that, I do want to know from you, when was the very first time that you encountered Howard Thurman?
I encountered Howard Thurman first in his written word. I was a United States Army chaplain's assistant in 1971 in Fort Riley, Kansas. I was serving as the post chaplain's clerk. And part of my responsibility was to prepare the Sunday bulletin for the post chapel. And you may not have any idea what that means in those days, but there were mimeograph machines, stencils. You type out the whole program. If you made a mistake, you had to correct it. And there was a huge drum that you printed the materials on. So I just wanted you to know that it was a labor. But on the back of the bulletins, this particular Chaplain Bro, would have these meditations. And by chance, maybe by something else, one day I paid attention to the writer and I looked at the book. And on the jacket of the book was the picture of this smiling Black man. He was just like smiling. And I said, boy, he looks like me. Because I was awash in a sea of white clerics while I was there. And it was just so good to meet Howard Thurman there. I would meet him later, years later, while I was in seminary. I was the designated driver for Howard Thurman when he came to Garrett Evangelical Theological Seminary in Evanston, Illinois, for a convocation in his honor.
Wow.
And we spent the entire afternoon together with the woman who became my beloved wife, Sharon Watson, in those days. He kept probing me. He was asking me these nagging questions for which I'm still trying with which I'm still trying to struggle. Who are you? What do you really want? And how do you get what you want? I'm still trying to figure that out.
Yeah.
Who are you really? What do you want? And how do you get what you want? And later he would invite me along with 9 other people to spend an entire week with him in San Francisco. And we sat and we were nourished by the wisdom of Howard Thurman that entire week. And it was, to use his language, a watershed moment for me. It changed my life forever. Had no idea that years later I would become the editor of the Howard Thurman Papers, and that in all of the years of working with Thurman, we produced these volumes. In fact, there are over 11 volumes that we produced on Howard Thurman. But the wise old sage, he kind of always had a trick in his bag.
Thank you, Dr. Fluker, for sharing that. As you were talking, I was thinking, I don't know if we ever have one answer to who you are and what you will be, because I think as time progresses, so do we.
He has a great story about this question. He says that in the Bible, there's a story of Jesus, the disciples, and what was then called the Gerasene demoniac. You know, we have all, but he was a person who probably had several different personalities, had multiple personalities. So they're in the graveyard, according to Thurman, and this guy runs at Jesus and the disciples, and very funny for me is like the disciples get some head right away. They're gone, and the guy runs straight to Jesus, looks Jesus in the eyes, and Jesus looks him in the eyes. And the only question Jesus had for him, Thurman says, is, "Who are you?" Really? And the guy stood back and said, that's my whole problem. If I could just get this right.
Yeah.
But I have so many names that they call me Legion.
Yeah.
And we are rioting in the streets. But if I could get one name by which I call myself, I would be whole. This is Thurman on that text. So this is a very important question for Thurman.
Yeah.
Who am I really? And what is it that I want all the time? He calls it the hunger of the heart. My heart hungers for this. And I don't think you ever really answer it. To answer it might mean that you miss it for Thurman. And but one thing that I'm sure of is that it forces us always to be in this space that we're talking about today of quietness.
Yeah.
In quietness, in solitude, and in confidence, I find myself.
Yes. Why do you think that in that quote on quietness that Thurman says it's the heart whispering to us? Why do you think Thurman centered on the heart, and what does that teach us today?
Thurman was big on head and heart, reason, and what we like to call now emotions, social emotions. He called it the nervous center of our consent. That's his language. And he's dealing more with the will than just emotions. But why is it that the heart, because the heart has deep well for Thurman, deep subterranean wells that we are often unconscious of. The fact that the heart has its own language for Thurman, that it speaks, that it yearns. And perhaps, I don't think perhaps, the great era of modernity is that we focus more on the head than we have the heart. And this is so important for theological education, the need for discourse and practice, but learning the language, the rhythm, the movement of the heart, and what the heart is asking for. Again, he takes this idea of the hunger of the heart really from Olive Schreiner, but he uses it very effectively. He says, deep is the hunger. Always, the heart is asking to be fed. It doesn't just reach out, but it's asking for the other to reach out as well.
Yeah.
There's a great little photo I keep on my altar. It's of these new hatchlings. They've just arrived. And the camera is focused on them because their mouths are gaping holes. They're little, it's just like one, and they're hungry all the time. And so Thurman thinks the heart is also very hungry, but it's hungry for the other, lowercase, uppercase. Because for him, at some point, the lowercase other and the uppercase other are one and the same.
Yeah. Thinking about your life, you've done so many things. What has your heart hungered for, and in what ways have your experiences filled it?
Boy, that's an incredible question. I hunger for the same thing that everybody else hungers for, I think. I hate to universalize, but I just want to be loved. I think at the end of the day, most of us are begging for recognition. See me as being beautiful. See me as having something worthy of your look. Look at me and see my inherent dignity and worth. I want it so badly. And if I don't get it from you, there are some days I might try to wrest it from you, take it from you. Because like the philosopher Sartre says, hell is other people. Your look can either bless me or it can destroy me.
Yes.
So again, Thurman's thinking is incredibly relational. It's not just a fixation upon presence that we discover in the quietness. It's also the inherent need of the very fragile human heart that is always in need of touch from the other. And he bases, not just his theology, an entire ecclesiological concept around contact with fellowship.
Yes.
And if we do not have contact with fellowship, we create an aggregate of individuals who have doctrines and dogma and creeds, but we may never discover who we are and who the other is in that congregating. So the heart is the locus for Thurman, also of something else. And I haven't quite named it with Thurman. He doesn't always say this, but the mystics know this. There's something that Thurman believes is part of I wish I had a better word. I sound like Thurman, but I wish I had a better word for that. That has to do with the fragmentation of existence.
Yes.
We call it lost. Some people even call it unsaved. I'm scared of that word.
Yeah.
But the fragmentation of human beings, the fragility of our finitude, so to speak. He's so aware of this. And so mystics are always after a sense of wholeness, which is a blessed union. The beatific vision, but it's the idea of union. And how do I prepare myself in such a way that I can experience this wholeness? Thurman sometimes, for careful readers, he calls it integrity.
Yeah.
And how can I find this for myself? And what does it mean when I find it? Two things, and I'll wrap that up. One is this blessed union that I discover in quiet when I slow down, pay attention to all of the noise that's been driving me. Because we're very noisy people. Like right now, we're in this quiet studio. Outside, there's noise. We're trying to find a place to be quiet so we can have this conversation. Or when I've been in homes that are located near the freeways, and you can hear the noise from the freeway if it's your first trip into that home.
Yeah.
But the people who are there, they're oblivious to the noise because it has become part of their habitus.
Yeah.
It's who they are. But mystics know this, that there's so much noise. And the noise blocks our listening to the deep, which is calling us. And so quieting down gives us opportunity to hear what is always speaking.
Yeah.
So I've learned in my own experience, I think that was your question. In my own experience, I've learned to not only spend time in quiet, like in meditation, but to seek quietness as a continuous practice. Thurman, of course, calls it disciplines of the spirit. But the spirituality, which has become a very clever and inaccurate facade for what mystics are pointing to, I just want to make that statement. But the deep piece of deep calling to deep for Thurman is always something that calls us to discipline. to certain practices. And it's no surprise to me that one of the disciplines for Thurman that we don't talk enough about is suffering, because we spend most of our days avoiding suffering.
Yes.
Who wouldn't? Who wants to suffer? But mystics are keenly aware that there is so much suffering going on amidst the noise.
Mm.
So when I find myself, when I receive presence in the quietness, when I've moved the monkey mind, the Buddhists call it, my chattering mind, all of the talk, all of the things that call me away, when I detach. Madame Guyon called it abandonment. When I abandon all of this, I begin to go deep, and in the presence, I become aware not only of my loneliness, my alienation, my fragmentation, but this big word that covers it all, my suffering, and the suffering, I think, of humanity and of the creation. I think I'm right with that. There's some things in the Bible that kind of said creation is having a very hard time. And the last time I looked, it's kind of not looking good right now. But there's suffering. This is my point.
Mm-hmm.
And for Thurman, perhaps his most dominant theme is suffering. And I think that places him in a league with some other great mystics who are not saying that you got to go around and be miserable, because most great spiritual masters whom I've either met or read are always laughing. It's kind of an interesting thing. Thurman is hilarious.
Really?
He is cracking up all the time. The Dalai Lama, you ever just cracking up? Why is it so? Everything is so funny. Or Desmond Tutu, when he was with us. You know, if you met Desmond Tutu, he was a riot. He'd fall on the floor. He lays prostrate before you and he prays like he's getting, but it's just hilarious. So, but this suffering piece that they're pointing to is deeper than just physical suffering. Yes, that happens. And some would actually create physical suffering to get to the notion of suffering that I'm talking about. But I think it's the suffering points to the disrepair of the word. So in Hebrew language, tikkun becomes very important. It's the repair of the world. We are called in our suffering and in recognizing the suffering of others to become part of the repair of the world. And Thurman's understanding of discipline is so like that. He's constantly calling us to recognize not just our own existential suffering, despair, loneliness, dread, these words we give to. He's also asking us to pay attention to the suffering of God's creation. And human beings are a very small part of that. We
think we're larger.
He says in one place what Arnold Toynbee said, you know, the thing that distinguishes God from human beings is that God is never in a hurry. And in fact, he says, if human beings were to mess this up, that is our chance to be repairers of the world, healers of the world. He says, if we messed it up, God could create a new civilization out of an anthill.
Wow.
So this is Howard Thurman. So you're asking me about my own, and I'm saying that one of the things I discovered in my own search in the quiet are the deep things that I've often missed about suffering and my role in suffering and repair. And I'm using those terms for this moment, but how do we begin healing?
Thank you for watching part 1 of our 2-part series with Dr. Walter Earl Fluker. Walter Earl Fluker and Associates is delighted to announce that their digital version of the 5-volume documentary edition, The Papers of Howard Thurman, is now available and accessible to the public at thurmanpapersproject.org.